Next to doodle, it starts with a very similar picture. What happens in unit fractions when the bottom is 1? Well, 1 over 1, that's this one. That's my whole measuring cup. I have one piece and I have it. So that's just a whole cup of something. A more interesting question is a fraction one number or two? As an example, if I have 1/2 and I have 1 divided by 2, in many ways, those are the same thing. It's I have something, I've cut it into 2 pieces, and I have one of them. And 2 pieces, I have one of them. But if you ask people, is this one number or two? Everyone is going to say that's 2 numbers, right? 1 divided by 2. See the 2 numbers? Why are you asking me? That's a silly question. And if you show them 1/2, then they will say, oh, that's just half of something, right? That's just a spot on the number line, 1/2. So that's one number. It might not really be that simple. It's sort of a philosophical question we're not going to answer now. But if you have any friends or relatives that are math people, then you can disturb them by asking them this. Is a fraction one number or two? How is a half different from 1 divided by 2? We want to be able to compare them. So which is bigger, a half or a third? And we've already done the more advanced copy, version of this when we talked about 3/8 and 2/4. So this is easier than what we've already done. Sometimes people like to draw pictures with a rectangle. Sometimes people like to use a number line. We have both methods right here. How would I shade the half on my rectangle?
You could shade 3 of them.
Okay, I'll just pick the top 3 because I'm lazy and I don't want to reach far. Okay. So there's my half. How about a third? How do I shade a third of them?
You shade 1.
If I just shade one thing, that's just 1 out of 6, not 1 out of 3.
Oh,
What I have 3 of are these columns, right? So that's my third. So which is bigger, my blue shading or my green shading?
you're green.
The blue shading has 3 pieces. The green shading only has 2 pieces. So the green shading is bigger. I'm sorry, the blue shading is bigger because it has more pieces. I could identify that each of those 3 squares is a sixth, but I don't have to know that. I can just see it has 3 things, 3 parts, instead of only 2 parts for the green. If I'm a number line kind of person, which of these number lines shows me 1/2 the clearest? They're all counting from 0 to 1. Which one is a half?
The one in the, like, you just go in the middle of between.
This one goes halfway and then stops, right? So that's half. Which one is a third?
So the last little line next to the one.
Last little line. Not quite sure which little line you mean. But it's this one. This is a third because three of them, 1, 2, 3, gets me all the way across. What is this number line about?
Four.
Yeah, so this is half. Halves, thirds. Quarters. What's the last number line?
Six.
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are those kitchen fractions: wholes, halves, thirds, quarters, and sixths. On the other side, which is bigger, a third? Well, we've drawn the third already. The third was this piece because 3 of them makes the whole rectangle. And for 1/6, well, that's just one box. The 6 of them makes the whole rectangle. So which is bigger?
The third.
The third. And we can see that on the number lines, if you're a number line kind of person, there's my third, because 3 of them goes all the way across. And my 6th is only this one. You might even be able to notice on either one that a third is actually twice as big. It takes 2 boxes, or it takes 2 of these steps, because that's the same distance. But we don't have to know what's twice as big. We can just see the third is bigger. Everyone okay with this slide?
Yes.
Holler if you're not. This is an important kind of thing to be able to see which is bigger. You don't have to be good at both things. If you like the boxes and not the number lines, use the boxes. If you like the number lines but not the boxes, use the number lines. You might have noticed that some of the number lines had spots that lines up. They all line up at 0 and 1. The third and the 6th have spots where they line up. And then the half and the quarter and the 6th all line up in the middle. We could talk about fractions that are equivalent to each other, that are equal to each other, and say, oh, a half is the same as 2 quarters. But we're not going to do that yet. We could talk about combinations, though. For example, how many thirds are needed to cover 1.5 rectangles? Let's try that and see. My thirds were green, right? So here's a third. That's 1/3. Then we have another third. Then we have another third. So unsurprisingly, if I have 3/3, that's the first hole. I want to cover half of the other rectangle. Can I do that well with only thirds?
Yes.
What do I do?
The kind of like the same thing.
Okay, so there I go. There's another third. if I want to cover half of the other rectangle, now I'm kind of in trouble. Following my directions, I should cover a little too more, not a little too less. But I've overcovered. Oh well. How come we can't use thirds to cover 1.5 rectangles exactly? It would be nice if we could.
Because 1.5 is bigger than 1/3.
Yeah. You can see on the number line, the thirds and the halves never line up nicely with each other. Here's a challenge problem. We can talk about this on Thursday if you want, but we're not going to do it now. There is a school that's having a race. So we're going to start here and race around the track. A blue flag will mark half of the lap. So where should I put my blue flag?
Like in the middle?
Like there or there? In the
Mm.
middle of the field doesn't really help me. If I'm starting here, where's halfway around? If you want to just drag it there, whoever's purple iguana, go ahead. Well, I barely got started there. I haven't gone halfway around yet. It has to be farther from the start than that. Now I've almost finished my lap. That seems like you're making me run too far for halfway.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's like there or like maybe over here.
Yeah, I would put it like kind of right over there. So I'm thinking of a line in my head, right? Dividing the track this way. So I've gone halfway and then there's the other half to go. That makes sense?
Yes.
So green flag, we're going to have 2 of them and they're going to mark thirds. Then the yellow flags, well, those are easier. We'll have 3 of them. Those will mark quarters, which is like every corner. And then the red flags, we're going to need a bunch of them. And they're going to mark sixths. And then the problem says someone decided to put the water station at the first flag you get to of each color. Is that a good plan to help the water stations be distributed evenly around the track so the joggers are always near a water station? So on your own, think about where the green ones should go for thirds and where the red ones should go for sixths, and see if this is a good plan or if someone messed up when they were making the jogathon plan. Does that sound like interesting things to think about for 2 days?
Yes.
Okay. This is not homework. Comparing fractions is annoying. And in real life, people avoid comparing fractions because trying to think about this kind of thing takes too much work. Which is bigger, half or a third? Which is bigger, a third or a sixth? Who wants to do that? So instead, people focus only on hundredths. Because we can turn other fractions into hundredths pretty well. If I want to shade half of my hundreds grid, I just go down the middle and there is half of it. What would I do for a quarter? You could shade it or tell me where to draw. We did a good job with this earlier today with this picture. This picture. So going back to where we are, how would I shade a quarter of it?
Do you do 4 of them?
Not 4 little boxes.
No, like 4 of like the, I guess like the rows, is that what it's called? Like all the way down, 4 of them?
I would actually do 5 by 5 because that turns the whole thing into quarters, right? Can you kind of see the 4 pieces there? I could draw with my green pen. See if I can have a steady hand. Does that help see the quarters?
Yes.
Okay, now let's do 1/6. Whoops, that's not my highlight. 1/6 is trickier. What could you do? Here's a bizarre thing. Let's just shade 1 out of every 6. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 2, like that. Do you believe that I've covered up 1 out of every 6 as I marched along?
Yes.
So how many did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I'm going to erase all those and put them together just so they look nicer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is 1 row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is another one. So that's my 1/6. I could do the same thing with a third. And this was about 17, right? Oh, obviously for blue, half of the 100 is 50. What's a quarter of the 100 for green? Think about quarters and dollars.
25.
25. Yellow is a little hard to see sometime. I'm sorry if this is hard on your monitor, but hopefully you can see this coloring. If I was to play the same game with yellow and just count every 3 shading one in, then I would get 33 for the third. So it's sort of like rating things on a scale of 1 to 100. There's enough spots that even if I didn't really want 100, I wanted a scale of 1 to 6 or something, then I can fudge it and make it work. I have enough granularity. So if people want to compare things, if we always talk about hundredths, then I don't have to worry about halves and quarters and thirds and sixths. Has this rung any bells? What's the special name for out of 100?
Was it that one fancy word you said we don't use? I forgot what it was.
I think I've been careful not to say it yet tonight. But if we want to talk about 1/2 and we say 50 something, what do we say?
Percent.
Percent, yeah. So percent is at its root just a lazy person's way to avoid talking about fractions. It used to be 2 words. Per cent, cent meaning 100, like 100 cents and $1. But English is a sloppy language, so those eventually got smashed into just 1 word. And percent just means out of 100. It means a fraction whose denominator is 100. Has 100 on the bottom. And if we just think for most things, how full is my gas tank? How hungry do I feel compared to when I'm starving? How much of the car trip have we driven yet? If we talk about percents, then we can just think about out of 100 and avoid dealing with other fractions. And that way we don't have to compare different kinds of denominators.